33. This is going to go till 11:30. Immediately afterwards, back in the student union for lunch till 1. And student union, we will stay for our ethics seminar from 1 to 2. If you had not attended the trial preparation class earlier today, this is Jeff Benyon. He is a trial whiz. He is a tech guru. He is
the official term.
Yeah, you know, he's a really good guy to know. So if you want any more information, you can always refer to your packet. And also, someone did have a question about, he does teach at Cuyamaca College. He's a professor over there, teaches trial and litigation classes. Do you do additional classes other than your? We try.
The program that we have at Cuyamaca is an ABA-approved program, which I don't know if any of you have gone to those. It's a blessing and a curse because it's ABA approved, so you get that certification, but also everything that we teach is governed by the same 35-year-old curriculum of the ABA. And changing that is like trying to get a bill drafted. It's horrible. It's a long, drawn-out process, so we don't do that. But what we do is we do teach Saturday classes. Some of them are MCLE classes. I do usually every year teach an MCLE class on TrialDirector. Sometimes we do classes on like necessary litigation software, stuff that will help paralegals out. Because it is kind of tough out there. We really do want to help paralegals get the best jobs that they can.
Are you offering any classes this summer?
I don't know yet.
Can you tell them your website so they can check and check up on you?
Yeah, you can either find me at jbenyonlaw.com, or if you can't remember that, trialbatman.com.
You see what I'm saying? Okay, so without further ado, I will turn over the tech guru presentation here. And he is, again, a certified trial director, presenter, trainer. So the guys know. Go ahead and get started.
No. Okay. Well, how bad do you want it?
I'm not jumping up on you.
Let me see. Do we have any more handouts?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let me just ask, how many of you here know what TrialDirector is? Okay, just a couple of you. That's pretty representative of the legal community, I would say. How many of you have heard of or know, been in a trial, seen a trial, heard of anything where they're presenting evidence with computers? Or how many of you have ever seen CSI? So basically, what I do is I try to make really boring trials more like CSI. Okay? Now, the outline, if you've got the outline here, it's kind of a short outline, and I've got 2 points at the top that are really the focus of what I want to make this presentation about. The very first one here, and let me just put this up.
First rule of trial. Make sure everything's turned on.
Right. As you can see, it says here on the outline, trial is not about being right. It's about convincing 12 lay people that you are right. Okay, what is the difference between those two things? What's the difference between being right and convincing someone that you're right?
Perception.
Perception. Okay? So one of the guys that takes me to trial with him all the time, he does the weirdest things at trial. Sometimes he says something and I'm like, that's not true though, and why are you saying it like that? He wins like all the time though. And because he knows that when you're in trial, what it comes down to, you're not trying to draft a 30-page motion with another 700 pages of exhibits to give it to the judge who's going to read it overnight and come up with a legal decision based on precedent. You're trying to convince people that you are. Here's point number 2. Whether you win at trial is not based on what evidence was admitted, but one, what evidence the jury remembers, and 2, what evidence the jury understands. Okay, how many of you have read legal briefs by lawyers? There's a lot of like pursuant to and where to for, therefore I am very fancy speaker.
Understand your audience.
Right. You absolutely have to understand your audience. Now, how many of you have ever served on a jury? Did you guys like that experience? I would love to serve on a jury. I get kicked off every single time. But one of the advantages that I have is I go to trials a lot, and I always get a chance to talk to the jurors afterwards. So I always ask them the same questions when we finish the trial. What evidence did you find the most convincing? What were things that we hit on that were not very convincing that you just thought we should skip over? What witnesses did you believe? Which jurors were on our side? Which jurors were against us? When did you make your decision that you were going to vote the way that you voted? And it's interesting because after the, I think 20 or 30 trials that I've been in, you get a pretty good sense of what the jurors are looking for and what they remember. We had a case one time, and it was hands down the most boring case that we have ever done, ever. It was a construction defect case, and what happened was this guy in La Jolla had multi-million-dollar house, like made of glass and stuff, looking over the bay, and then what's that?
Is it over Black's Beach?
No, it was somewhere by like the La Jolla Cove or something like that. But anyway, so he had this really expensive house, and we represented the plumber. The plumber ran his pipes where the pipes weren't supposed to be, and then there was also a guy who was the stucco guy, and he nails stuff to the wall. He put his nails where they weren't supposed to be. Anyway, literally the perfect storm. This guy who had his house built, he goes on vacation for a month, and the pipes, the nails, they had like a perfect fit, and then they rusted away, and he comes back, his garage is flooded, there's mold isn't covered by insurance, it's a huge mess. So we had this 3-week trial, and the plaintiff would call someone, and then we would say, well, isn't it true that it was the stucco guy's fault? And then the stucco guy would get up and say, well, isn't it true that it was the plumber's fault? And then the plaintiff would do his redirect, and well, isn't it true that they're both at fault? And then we would get up there, well, didn't you just say on cross-examination that it was the stucco guy's fault? Like 30 witnesses exactly like that, and it was horrible. It was just excruciatingly boring. So the jury foreperson on that case was an engineer who taught at USD, okay? And so someone who you would expect to be good with numbers, okay? So we had mentioned, without exaggeration, no less than 20 times that there was a $5,000 offset. So what happened was after the things rusted out, our guy, he paid $5,000 towards the mold remediation, and there was $100,000 in damage. Okay, so they were asking for $95,000. So anyway, the jury comes back and they find that our guy was 25% at fault, and that the jury verdict should come out to like $27,942.12. And we're like, oh, okay, well, that's not that bad because we knew our guy had some fault. And then we're like, how did they get that number? Because there was a number that no one came up with. Okay, so we're like, how did they get that number? And we ask him outside, and we're like, so Mr. Engineer who builds bridges and is in charge of the public safety based on carrying the one, how did you get this $27,000, down to the penny? And he says, well, it was like, guy was like $100,000 at fault. There's like $100,000 in damages, and we already said he was 25% at fault, so $27,942.12. It's about 25% of 100. Like, how do you not do that math? And then we said, I was talking to him. I said, so, what were the questions? What were you guys wondering about when you were in the jury room? Because, I mean, as soon as you give your closing argument and the jury goes back, you start wondering, what are they talking about right now? What did they understand? So that's always like one of the first questions that we ask. So we said, so what did you guys have any questions about? And the guy says, well, we weren't sure if there was a $5,000 offset or not, so we decided that there wasn't. And we're like, but we said it 15 times, like no less than 15 times. But it doesn't matter because it doesn't come down to what evidence comes in. It comes down to what evidence they remember. Okay? So you have a case comes in the door, you start working it up. Say your trial is a year and a half later, you've spent $80,000 on experts and documents and depositions and getting your case ready for trial. You've got a great case. You go to trial, you put it on. Nothing that you have done matters. The only thing that matters is what these people remember. Okay, so you can say something 100 times and it doesn't matter. You have to be a good presenter. You have to present the evidence in a way that people will remember it when they're in the jury room. Okay? That's the very most important. All right. Let me just ask you guys, does anyone think anything, what do you think the pros and cons are of the jury system? Everyone thinks jury, it's because we're a first world country, democracy, bald eagles, that's the jury system, it's a symbol of our greatness. But what are the cons of the jury system?
One stupid person can screw up your whole case.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But it's a lot easier to Google stock judges than it is some jurors, so because there are a limited number of them. What were you going to say something?
I couldn't hear what her comment was. I said one stupid juror can screw up the whole case.
It's super unpredictable.
It is. It's super unpredictable. You can have a fantastic case and not know what is going to happen at all. We had a case one time. It was against Caltrans. They had, how they, I don't know if any of you guys are ex-convicts or anything like that, but you know how it's like 3 or 4 of you looked away. But you know how they, like on Saturdays, like the people who get like DUIs and stuff, they clean up trash on the side of the road. So they had, this was an especially big group of DUI people or convicts or something. And so they brought them down in a school bus and they parked it on the side of the freeway. The school bus, of course, was a lot bigger than the shoulder, so they decided to just park it in the slow lane and not close off the lane. And our client, she was a grandma on a Saturday morning delivering cookies to the veterans. And her shirt had 100 American flags on it. And she was driving down the freeway, saw a bus in her lane that was parked. She tried to get over, no one would let her over, and she went right under it, and it almost took her head off, and she died instantly. And, we had a lot of evidence on our side. We did a 1-month jury trial, and then in the end, the jury just came back, and they're like, well, yeah, we ruled against you because we thought that it was against the law to sue Caltrans. We're like, don't you think someone would have brought that up by now? I mean, we're not going to put you through this for a month and spend all this money if it's against the law to sue Caltrans. So you never know what those people are thinking. There was a trial in Australia. It was a year-long trial. The parties had spent about $1 million putting this trial on, and one of the bailiffs or one of the attorneys noticed that some of the jurors were taking notes vertically. I don't know how you would notice that, but they brought it to the attention of the court, and they looked at the jurors' notes and saw that 3 of them were doing Sudoku. And so, mistrial. They had to start all over again. Like 1,000 witnesses that they called, $1 million spent, and they had to start all over again. So you're looking at him thinking like, he gets it. He gets it. And he's thinking like, is that a 3 or a 7? You know? So you never know. It's totally unpredictable. Okay? What else? What else can we think about the jury system? Some of the best trial attorneys in town, I think about the qualities that they have, and they're not necessarily the smartest, they're not necessarily always right, but they're really good actors. Okay? There are very few really good trial attorneys in town, and they distinguish themselves by the characteristics that they have. And they get paid a lot of money. They get paid a lot of money to be actors. I mean, you go in and you do a show, and you talk with your hands, and you use the right intonations and inflections in your voice, and you talk to people nicely, and people go on your side. So, charisma. I mean, we've come up with a system where it doesn't matter if you're nice, or it doesn't matter if you're right. It matters if you're nice and if you're a good speaker. So that's kind of weird, right? We had one of my bosses one time. He goes to a trial and he asks the jury foreperson after he got out. So what was the most convincing evidence that you heard throughout this trial? And she says, well, I really liked your ties and your shoes. I thought you had the best ties every day. And we're like, thank you. I mean, we won that trial, but it's like, you never know. And it's created a system where you're not focused on being right, you're focused on putting on a good show. Okay? Right. Okay, so this is a good thing and a bad thing. Okay? It's bad for people that don't know how to put on a good show. It's really good for people that know how to put on a good show. Okay, so what I do in trial is, I mean, that doesn't mean that I trick or I lie or anything like that. I put on a good show. And how do I put on a good show? By presenting evidence in a unique way that not a lot of people do. Okay, because I want people to remember the evidence that I present. Now, the program that I use is TrialDirector. Before I get into TrialDirector, let me talk about a couple of the alternative ways that people nowadays present evidence at trial. And I asked this last time, but we've got a little bit of a different group. Seemed like almost everyone on that side did not like what I did last time. This side is awesome, though. Right. So how many of you have been to a trial or watched a trial or seen A Few Good Men? When I teach my classes at Cuyamaca, we heavily borrow on A Few Good Men. We're going to do the same today. Okay, so what are some of the ways that people present evidence at trial, exhibits at trial? Elmo. And what is an Elmo?
Come on, you guys are in school.
I've got kids, so Elmo's.
You put them on sheets, and then it puts it up on there.
Yeah, Elmo.
Projection.
Right, Elmo it's the name brand like Kleenex or whatever, Xerox, for a document camera. And the way a document camera works is it's got a surface right here and then a camera overhead and lights, and you put documents under it and you can zoom in on it, and you move your documents around, and it not like the kind that I had in school where you have the transparencies and stuff, but it actually, you can just get any document or any object and put it underneath the camera and it will project it. Okay? They're horrible. Yeah, there's actually, it's, I don't know if she's still there, but in department, I think it's 69, the clerk, she gets migraine headaches from Elmo lights. So you can use an Elmo, but you can't use it with the lights. So everything you're projecting on the screen is super dark, which is a weird, I don't know if that's an allergy, a weird condition to have if you work in a courtroom where people are presenting evidence. But Elmos are very popular methods of presenting evidence. They're convenient because you can put anything you want under there. You have your exhibits. You can pull exhibits out of your notebook, put them under there, zoom in on them, do whatever you want. Now, the problem with Elmo's that I've seen in that case that we had, the Caltrans case, the opposing counsel, they had an Elmo. Okay, I was presenting evidence in TrialDirector. They had an Elmo. They had a yellow highlighter, and this was a very document-intensive case because we're looking at regulations and administrative manuals and safety procedure manuals, and so we had a lot of 8 by 10, 8 to 10 point font documents, single spaced all the way down. And so you get this document, you put it under the Elmo, and then to highlight what you want, get the yellow highlighter and you highlight it. But the contrast was so bad on the Elmo that anything they highlighted was just showed up as black. And they're like, as you can see from the very important portions of this document, and I'm looking, I'm like, does no one else see this or not see this? Everything they're doing is black. Okay. It's also kind of awkward because you have less control over what you're zooming in on. Also, some people, I was told this, get seasick from the zooming and the focus. But anyway, the other bad thing about Elmos is if you want to present pictures, you're limited to copies that you print out, which reduces the quality, and then you put them in, and then you zoom in on them. So Elmos have a number of limitations. They're convenient for a couple of reasons, but they also have a number of limitations. What are some other ways that people use to present evidence at trial?
Exhibit boards.
Exhibit boards. What do we know about exhibit boards? Why are those horrible?
Well, because the paralegal has to bring them in and out.
Yeah, they're boards. They're huge. They're also expensive. We had a case one time, and it was sweet. I had just quit my job at one firm, and then within a matter of months, we had a big case against them, and they had an economist, which, I mean, you don't really have to know what an economist is to know that it's the most boring part of the whole trial. Okay, they're talking about the science of numbers and math and why this interest rate calculated depreciation value, and it's boring. And so what the firm that we were going up against, the old firm that I used to work at, they got the report from their economist, and it was a 20-page report, and they had it printed out onto 20 different 4-foot by 3 boards in color. Yeah, and then they got an easel and they put it in the middle of the room about 5 or 6 feet away from the jury. And now that meant that the judge couldn't see it from where he was, and we had to get up and walk around and see what was going up on the easel to see what the jury was looking at. And then they were switching the boards as they go through this 20-page report. That project cost them several $1,000s to have those boards printed out. And the way it worked out was, by the 3rd board, the judge says, let's just go ahead and take our afternoon recess. And then the judge says, I don't want you guys to use the boards anymore. And they're like, but Your Honor, we have 17 more. And they were expensive, and they're in color. And he says, I don't care. They're horrible. No one can see them. No one cares about your boards. We're not using the boards. So they just lost several $1,000s right there of just printing costs. We had another case one time where we had this dynamite exhibit. It was an impeachment exhibit. So we brought it in, gift wrapped in butcher paper, and the other side said, what's that? We go, oh, that's our impeachment exhibit. Can we see it? Nope. And this was for the plaintiff. It was a car accident case. We messed that lady up, but she, like 2 months after she got in this car accident, she filled out a life insurance form and said that she has no ongoing complaints, that she has never had any back injuries or neck injuries or anything, and this was a back and neck injury case. So either she was telling the truth on the document, or she was lying under penalty of perjury. Either way, we didn't care. It was a terrific document, and we wanted it in. And so we had it put, or our co-counsel had it put on this big board, and he brings it in, and the lady gets up there and testifies that she's never had any previous accidents, that she still, to this day, 5 years later, feels pain in her neck and in her back. So they sit down. Our co-counsel gets up and says, unwraps his board, shows it to the other side right before he's going to ask her about it, and the other side objects and says, we need to go in the back and have a sidebar and talk about this exhibit. So we go in the back and we talk about it, and the judge says, well, there are portions of it that you can use and portions of it that you can't. Mentions insurance, so that's a big no-no. You can't mention insurance when you're in trials. And so he says, can you redact it? And the guy's like, I don't know if I can. So he got a black marker and he started going over it. You can see right through the black marker. So we ended up redacting it with duct tape. And it was the ugliest, most beautiful thing ever. Okay? But it was just, yeah, it was horrid. It was horrid. So, and I'm just looking at this as someone that does evidence presentations, looking at this old school trial attorney holding up his board with duct tape, and I'm just thinking, this is like nails on the chalkboard to me. Okay, now what's another fact about boards? Okay, so let me just tell you, if you've got this is, I think, a 10-foot screen. Okay, so if you've got a board, let me close this right here. If you've got a board that's a 4-foot by 3-foot, okay, you're looking at, like this. So you're looking at text. If you've got, and now this is like 1.5 times space, 16-point font or something. If you've got a document that's like 10-point font, you're going to be looking at text that's like half this size. And so you're either going to have to get your board and like walk it right up to the jury and then put it down and talk about it, or walk it up to the witness or something. Putting text-intensive documents on boards is still not very effective for what you want to do if you want to show someone the text on a document. It's a lot easier to just, zoom in on stuff like that. And then you also get to control what portions of the text they're looking at. Now, what's another method of presenting exhibits at trial? We've got boards, we've got Elmos, flip charts, PowerPoint. I hate PowerPoint. It's like,
I've seen it in criminal cases a lot.
I know, everyone uses it. Okay, let's talk about PowerPoint before we talk about flip charts. What is the biggest limitation of PowerPoint? You put together a PowerPoint slide, presentation, and then what? You get up there to do your examination, and what happens? What happens if slide number 3, someone objects to that? You're like, okay, hold on a second. Let me go back into edit mode and remove slide number 3. Okay, we're back now. It requires you to stick to a script, basically. Now, when you're in trial is very fluid, very dynamic. Someone says something, it might not be exactly what you thought they were going to say, and so, say you've got this dynamite exhibit lined up, and you're like, well, isn't it true that you never broke your leg? And then the next page is something where, a medical exhibit where they broke their leg 3 years prior, and they go, no, I broke my leg 3 years prior. And you're like, all right, I was going to impeach you with this next slide, so let's just zip through it real quick and go to slide number 5. Right, it's not fluid, and trial is very fluid, okay? I just did this murder trial, and the DA, he had PowerPoint, and one of the exhibits that he wanted to use was it was a gang shooting, and this girl was shot in the head, and so the DA wanted to use an autopsy photo of they saw your face off and you get like bone saw dandruff in your hair, and then they scoop all your brains out, and it shows like how the bullet bounced around. It's the grossest thing I've ever seen in my life. Okay, and there's no way that's admissible. But he thought it would be, so he put it in his PowerPoint slide, and he had all of his exhibits in PowerPoint. And so what he would do is he just scrolls through them really fast, and we're like, you could see it. I mean, we just saw the dead girl with her face cut off with a bone saw and her brains scooped out. And I mean, there was a ruling from the court that cannot come in. And he's like, well, I'll just do it fast then. And I mean, that image came up like 20 times, and we're like, this is no good. And my client, who is in jail, also thinks that it is no good and was in prison now because he got convicted. But I mean, there are a lot of limitations to using PowerPoint. At Cuyamaca, where I teach, one of the professors there is also a judge, and he says that he goes, "Oh, Jeff, yeah, you like to do things with computers. Why don't you come in and teach a class about how PowerPoint is awesome?" No, I will not. Okay, now someone else mentioned flipboards and butcher paper and stuff. Most courts have got butcher paper and flip charts and stuff in the courtrooms. What are some of the disadvantages to using flipboards? Yeah, let's go back to A Few Good Men. Okay, how many of you remember that one scene? Has anyone here not seen A Few Good Men? All right, how much time do we have left? Okay, so there's a scene where Tom Cruise and Kevin Bacon, he's the prosecutor, and Tom Cruise is the defense attorney, and they do this thing where they haze Marines and they say that it's part of the tradition or something. And so Kevin Bacon, do you guys remember this part? Those of you who are my friends who have seen the movie? Kevin Bacon gives this guy something like the Marine Code of Conduct or something like that, and says, "Can you show me in there where it says that you need to perform a code red," which is the nickname for the hazing? And he goes, "Well, it's not in there." And then Kevin Bacon looks all smug, like, "I've just proven my point." And he's walking back to his table with his book, and then Tom Cruise jumps up, grabs the book out of his hand, and he gives it to the witness and says, "All right, tell me where it says in this book where the kitchen is." And the guy goes, "Well, it doesn't say that in the book." And he's like, "What? You've never eaten in 3 years?" And then they pan back to Kevin Bacon. He's got this look like, "Oh, I just got smoked." So that is what happens with flip charts all the time. So unless a flip chart is entered into evidence as an exhibit, any opposing counsel can get up and draw all over it. If you just drew a graph on how injured your client is, I can then get up there on my turn, get a red pen, and just mark it off and put, "No, she's not." Okay? And I've seen, I mean, not to that extent, but I've seen things like that happen. And then you look, you're like, "But that's my chart. I just drew that." And it's like, well, you shouldn't have left it up, So, and this happens a lot too, because people, they'll draw on the butcher paper and then they'll just leave it up there and thinking like, well, I'm just going to leave it up there until someone goes over and flips down my chart where I wrote down top 10 reasons why my client deserves $1 million. Okay, so people will just leave their charts up there, and then we'll just go right up there, just doesn't deserve it because that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie. Now your chart just turned into top 10 reasons why your client is a liar. Okay? So that's why I don't like using the charts. Also because I have, as most attorneys do, really bad handwriting. All right, so what do we use? I use TrialDirector. Okay, this is TrialDirector. Here is the big secret about TrialDirector. Before I go into that, let me just tell you, TrialDirector, there are a number of methods of presenting evidence at trial. There are a couple of other programs that people use. TrialDirector is the Microsoft Word. Everything else is like the WordPerfect, and we all know how I feel about WordPerfect. They're all the lesser programs. TrialDirector's got by far the lion's share of the market. So here is the big secret about TrialDirector. It's extremely effective, and it's extremely easy to use and to learn. Okay? But it looks like it's complicated, but it's not. Now here's how that's beneficial to paralegals. Because when it comes to doing computer stuff, attorneys don't do computer stuff. Okay? They rely on the paralegals to do it. Now I have built my career based on TrialDirector. I mentioned a little bit earlier that when I first started my career, I got put on a track where we were doing trials, and we had a rep from TrialDirector come in and show us how to use it, and then I used that to go on my next firm and just show the people I was working with, you know, like, hey, let's do some electronic presentation stuff. And because of that, I now, by the time I graduated law school, I had been at like 20 jury trials. Okay, I just did trial after trial after trial because I was a paralegal that knew how to use TrialDirector. And so now, as a licensed attorney, I use that because everyone is like, oh, I need help at trial. I get contracted out a lot. I get contacted by people who are getting ready to go to trial. I mean, not only do I present the evidence at trial, but I've also been in like 20 or 30 jury trials where you know, we've had really complex presentations of evidence. And so I get contacted a lot to either present at trial or to second chair at trial. And it all started with TrialDirector. Okay, it's an excellent skill to have. And not only that, but it's just getting to the point in San Diego, in the legal market, in the legal community, where it's starting to become a really big thing. Okay, you have the first time you go to trial and you use TrialDirector, the other side is like, oh, what just happened to me? I totally got TrialDirectored. And then they use TrialDirector, and then the next time they go to trial, they TrialDirector someone, and it just kind of snowballs. And it's getting to the point. TrialDirector's been around for a long time, okay, but it's getting to the point where there's a huge demand for it. There's a very small supply, and the secret is it's easy. It's easy to learn, and it's a really great skill to get. Okay, so I do teach classes in a computer lab with TrialDirector. I am a certified instructor on TrialDirector. I usually do those every year. We're trying to set something up again for this year. If any of you are interested in that, let me know. And I'll let you know when we've got those classes coming up. But as a certified instructor, one of the things that I can do is I get 6-month licenses, 6-month free licenses for the classes that I teach. So any of you can go on the TrialDirector's webpage right now. Well, not right now because we're in a low-tech classroom. But you can go to TrialDirector. You can download a 30-day free license for TrialDirector, and it's like 99.9% fully functional for 30 days. I actually I've done a number of trials using the 30-day free trial. But since I'm a certified instructor, I can get a 6-month license for anyone who goes to my classes. So if anyone's interested, just let me know, and I'll let you know when we've got classes coming up. But extremely easy to use, extremely impressive, extremely high demand. Mm-hmm.
What's the cost of the class?
It's like, I think last year we did, it was like $30 or something like that, and it was one 4-hour class beginning, and then we did an advanced class that was another $30 or something like that. So I mean, it's not that expensive. I mean, TrialDirector, they have classes and they charge like it's like $3,000 or something like that. Or they'll do like a 1-day 8-hour class. It's like $1,500 or something for one person. No. No.
Is that something that you can, like from this 30-day free trial, can you teach yourself, or do you really need somebody else to show you the ropes?
Well, TrialDirector, I mean, if you're good with computers, you can learn a lot of it yourself. I mean, it definitely helps. There are a lot of things that come up, like when you're in trial, you'll have a lot of situations, different scenarios come up with different types of evidence that you're getting from your side, from opposing counsel, it helps to have a lot of experience in trial and doing it, hooked up to a projector. Things work differently when you're under stress. Things break a lot more. So it does help to have that experience in trial, but you can definitely get a really good foothold on it if you just go to the web page and download it. So let me show you guys. Oh, this is the TrialDirector building. It's made by InData.
What is it, TrialDirector.com?
It's like indatacorp.com. But if you Google TrialDirector, I'm sure it will be in the first couple of links. All right. So this is a document right here. This is, I put this document in here because some of the documents that you're going to be presenting at trial, some of the exhibits you're going to be presenting at trial are going to be text heavy. Okay, not everything is going to be, an accident diagram or something, or a murder scene or something. Some of the things that you're going to be looking at are going to be text documents. So it's important to have a method of presenting documents in a way that helps the court flow, helps the flow of trial, helps the jury understand it, helps them focus on just the things that you want them to focus on. This is a court opinion. It's one of my favorite. You should all read this opinion. It only gets better. Let's see, what's this right here? This judge, he's in prison, I think, right now. Not for this opinion, though.
Who's the judge?
This was a case. It was something. It's hard to tell because it's just so full of insults. But
Jones Act?
no, let's see. It was something about a shipyard or something like that.
Harbor workers or something? This guy's a repressed John Gresham.
Yeah, and it's not clear because he does say that the briefs submitted were written in mustard-stained paper and crayon. I don't know if that's a metaphor or if it actually is written in crayon because
Maybe it was a prison handwritten.
I've seen those before too. See, there he goes. Upgrade to a nice shiny number 2 pencil.
What's left of his crayons?
Oh, but counsel could put his eye out. Okay. Now, let me just also say, every single time I've done a trial in TrialDirector, since it's like my thing, I always go and I ask the jury about it. What did you guys think about it? I always, every single trial, get positive feedback. And that is who you're catering to. You're catering to the jury. Now, you see, it helps you, when you're in TrialDirector, you've got all your exhibits loaded. It helps tremendously with the flow. You can put stuff up faster. You can focus in on just the parts that you want, talk about it, get it down, and then move on. All right? Now, it's a really big help when you're talking about pictures. This is a picture that I use in my classes when we're talking about evidence and crime scene photos and how gory stuff gets excluded sometimes. None of you, for those of you who have seen A Few Good Men and who do not use WordPerfect, who are my friends, do not Google crime scene photos. Don't do a Google image search. It's the worst. And I know some of you are going to think oh, he just said that. I'm going to go do it. Don't. It's horrible. I went through and I found some of these candy photos of crime scenes. But, I mean, you just pretend that this is a really gory photo of, apparently it's Trisha's birthday. But this dude has got a hatchet in his kneecap that's still there. And this is a low-res photo also. There's appears to be a bloody shovel. And then also there's some footprints, bloody footprints in the cabbage patch. Now, if this were a real photo, you're able to zoom in on the pictures that you want to right away, and you can get crystal clear detail on the photos. Because I would say in the last 5 or 6 years or so, we've definitely seen a transition from photos being produced on printed out film and digital photos. I would say probably, with the exception of one trial, every photo that I have from presented at a trial has been from a digital photo, either from a phone or experts go out there and they take pictures. The police now, they do all their crime scene photos and accident scene photos on digital cameras, and they give you the digital camera, the digital photos. And so if you're not presenting them on a computer, you're printing them out, reducing the image quality of it. Like the average 8 or 12 megapixel, I've got 8 megapixels on my phone, so like regular cameras, those are like 13 megapixels. You take a picture and that will print out perfectly fine poster size. Okay, so you're not going to want to print something out poster size, but what that means is that you can zoom in on pretty much any detail that you want, and it will be a crystal clear detail. Okay, because usually you're not going to want the whole picture, but you can zoom in on an accident scene, on a scratch on a car. Whereas if you print out the photo, put it underneath an Elmo, or make copies of copies and distribute it, you're going to lose a lot of that detail. Now, if you want to go extra fancy, I don't know what kind of gun this is, but as I move through it here with my finger, you can present different things in TrialDirector that you would not be able to present on an Elmo. Okay. This is what I was talking about right here when I'm talking about zooming in on minute details of a photo. So this is a $100 bill. Say you don't need all of the details of the full $100 bill. You just want to know why Benjamin Franklin has got chocolate all over his chin, and what in the world does it say on his lapel? Oh, it says United States of America. Right there. You can't do that. You can't do that with an Elmo. You can't do that with any other presentation method. You can't do that with a board. You might be able to do it with a board if you get it right in the juror's face and take turns putting their nose up against it. But again, I've just presented a JPEG, a computer image file, for free. I didn't pay the $400 or something to have it printed out on a board, subject to exclusion at the court's whim. More crime scene photos. This is...
Some people have my cop sense of humor.
I know. They must be attorneys.
Criminal attorneys.
Or really good attorneys.
Really good criminal attorneys.
Now, there's a bunch of different presentation options also. I've got some limitations when I'm teaching this class here. First of all, for time, and second of all, because you guys don't have the computers in front of you, so it's kind of difficult to teach a class on computers without you actually having the computers. But there are a number of things that you can do, such as, if I want, I can present evidence side by side. I've got a number of different options. Death by PowerPoint. All right. Now I want to show you guys real quick also Oh, I can't let you go without not seeing this. I don't know if any of you like Sean P. Diddy Combs. This is a request for restraining order against him because of the bad things that he did. He knocked down the Twin Towers and then drove to this lady's house and beat up her children. He stole her casino chip that was worth $100 zillion and her hospital keys. Yeah.
Bit of fiction.
This is from the 2008 Daily Transcript. Technical skills have also become a required element for paralegals in the competitive market, whether it's Lexis, Microsoft Office, or TrialDirector. This was on the Spotlight on Paralegals. I want to show you guys probably one of the coolest features of TrialDirector. Now, when you have a video of deposition and it's been videotaped, it can be, I mean, you want to show that deposition at trial. There are a number of hurdles you have to overcome. First of all, like how do you present it, putting in the DVD? What if you only want to show certain portions? TrialDirector solves that. It lets you create clips. There's no, I don't have an audio hookup, but you can just pretend that she's talking.
I have no idea what is in your mind or Haladone's mind. I just know that you called me as a witness. Whether you think I'm adverse or not, I don't know.
She goes on being,
Oh, okay, it's right here.
well, I don't have a hookup.
Oh, okay.
There's no Mr. Bond. Witnesses are also given exhibits at trial, and TrialDirector gives you the option to, when someone puts talking about the exhibit, to actually present the exhibit side by side. Now, if it happens to be a text-intensive document like this one, you can also zoom in on it
I don't really know. I mean, I might
and move stuff around as she's talking about it.
when, I'm just not sure.
All right. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so let me tell you guys a couple of stories about how TrialDirector has really helped us when we've been in trial. We had this one case, and there was it was a case that we were defending, and the client was claiming she was injured, in 15 million different ways. Medical records did not support that. She had not been to a doctor in like 4 or 5 years. So then she gets an attorney, and then the attorney sends her to a doctor who, of course, says that she's incredibly injured. And in the initial nurse's report, though, there was something in there that said, like, plaintiff presents not in apparent distress, not in pain, reports that she's not in pain. And so we use this document in cross-examination on the nurses, on the plaintiff side, when we were cross-examining their doctor, their nurse. And so they knew that we were going to ask that question because it was, a real key document. And so we asked them about that document, and she goes off in this canned response, totally proud of herself about how, oh, well, it's in my experience, when that is said, that is not usually taken from the patient's own words, but that is more of just a canned annotation that the nurses put. And she says this, I've got the document up, and she's testifying, the witness in this formation of the courtroom, the screen was right behind the witness's head. So she has no idea what's going on behind her. But I zoom in on the document, so it's 10 foot by 10 foot. It turns out to fill the whole screen where it just says, patient's own words. And she's getting there, and we're like, oh, okay, yeah, interesting, okay. And she goes off for like 30 minutes, or 30 seconds, and then counsel for the other side just got their heads on their hands, and we just said, you might want to turn around and look behind you. And she looks behind her, patient's own words. And then she's just quiet. I'm like, that's all we have. We had another case where there was a witness in this murder trial, and she said she was an eyewitness. She was a key witness for the prosecution, and so this happened at downtown at a bar, and she says, well, it was my birthday, but I had nothing to drink that day. And we're like, sure you didn't. So as soon as she said that, I log onto her Facebook page. Your Facebook pages should all be private, by the way. So I log into her Facebook page. She has like 12 pictures on her Facebook page. 8 of them are from her drinking at her 22nd birthday. Okay, so I download all these pictures and of like her doing shots and pictures with all her friends drinking, and she's testifying. And in that case, the DA had put a 40-inch LCD monitor behind the witness, and so she's testifying. And we go, "Isn't it true that you were just totally slammed that night?" No? Okay, well, let's look at your Facebook pictures. And we put it up there, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and not take those down. So the whole time she's testifying, I am controlling the evidence. You know, we told the court that we're going to put up exhibit, 217, and it's in my discretion when I want to take exhibit 217 down unless they tell me to. So I was like, I'm just going to leave that up. So the whole time she's testifying, it's on the backdrop of her doing shots. Okay? So you have so much more control over the evidence. It's a much more effective way to present the evidence. In that case, actually, the judge said, that is the most impressive thing that I've ever seen in my courtroom. Now, thankfully, our client got convicted, and that means since we're appealing it, I get a free copy of the record. So I've got all these quips from the judge about how awesome TrialDirector was, but it's very effective. Judges love it. Juries love it. I had a case with Judge Dato, who's now in Central. We did this case. It was just a bench trial. It was a real simple trial, like 3 or 4 day trial. And I did TrialDirector, and this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And he says, he ruled in our favor. And then he says, before we go off record, I just want to ask Mr. Benyon, what is that program that you used? He says, I love it. I wish everyone would use it. So I just did actually an MCLE seminar for new attorneys, and there were 2, a judge and 2 trial attorneys, and all 3 of them said it is absolutely imperative that when you're going to trial that you do it on a computer. Okay, so my time is up here. I hope I've piqued your interest a little bit. If any of you guys have any other questions about it, I know I only had like an hour to talk about it, but feel free to send me an email, or you can, if you don't have my email, you ask Christine and she'll forward it to me. But I do a lot of work in teaching TrialDirector to paralegals. I think it's a great thing to get into, and I hope you guys all look into it. Question?
Not necessarily a question, but when I use TrialDirector, you better talk to your judge, because I had the whole dog and pony show, and I could highlight and underline, bring it forward, and the judge said, either you're going to show me the last slide, or don't use it at all. So you better know what your judge wants. If they don't want you doing the dog and pony show, I know it looks great and you keep the attention of the jury.
Right.
If they don't want it, then you're done. You don't even get to use it. You just say, forget it.
Right.
So I had to go and change my entire presentation.
Yeah, you do have to. When I do teach the full classes on it, we do talk about the coordination that you do with the clerk and with the judge and stuff. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, let me know about that. But always check with the clerk and the judge, and you can go in there beforehand and set stuff up and talk to them about it. So.
Alrighty, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead.